picture this. You're standing on a farm somewhere in South Africa,
Right.
and the rainy season is, well, it's running late.
As it always seems to do lately.
Yeah, exactly. So the dust is kicking up around your boots, your boreholes are working overtime, and you're basically staring down a looming drought. And as a farm manager, you know that making it through a dry season is, I mean, it's fundamentally a numbers game.
It really is.
Usually we spend our time obsessing over, the feed budget or calculating grazing rotation.
Sure.
But today we're shifting focus to the other half of that survival equation, which is water.
Yeah.
Specifically, the reality of what your livestock are actually drinking.
Right.
Because making it through to the next rain requires knowing the hard numbers about water quantity, tracking the creeping salt levels, and identifying the invisible poisons that sort of concentrate when the water table drops.
It becomes a biological tightrope, really, because when water gets scarce, we tend to focus entirely on the volume left in the tank. Like, do we have enough wet stuff?
Right. Just looking at the level.
Exactly. But the chemistry of what remains in that tank is fundamentally changing day by day. And that changing chemistry is what dictates animal survival.
And mapping out that changing chemistry is our mission for today's deep dive. So our source material comes directly from a really highly practical article. It's titled, Livestock Drinking Water: How Much, How Salty, and What Poisons It.
Great title. Very to the point.
Yeah, exactly what it says on the tin.
Okay.
And you can find this in the knowledge base on the website for the Department of Water and Sanitation, or the DWT. And it is, look, it's essential reading for anyone managing a herd right now. So we're going to keep things firmly grounded in reality today, cutting through the laboratory jargon to focus on just on-the-ground management.
Which is so important because, I mean, we have to start with the foundational arithmetic of a farm, right? The sheer volume demanded by the herd.
The raw numbers.
Yeah, the raw numbers. Because before water quality even becomes an issue, a farm has to survive the quantity requirement. So the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Agriculture, they provide some very sobering baseline figures for moderate weather. Let's look at a standard beef cow. She requires about 40 to 50 liters of water per day.
Just one cow.
Just one.
Wow, so that is a substantial baseline for just one non-lactating animal.
It is. And the mathematics shift dramatically when you look at a dairy cow in milk.
Okay.
They require their base maintenance water plus an additional 5 liters of water for every single liter of milk they produce.
Wait, 5 liters of water per liter of milk?
Exactly. And if we look at smaller stock, a dry ewe needs about 8 liters a day. But if she has a lamb at foot, that jumps up to 11 liters.
Makes sense.
A lactating sow, she demands 18 to 23 liters. And for poultry, which is usually measured per 100 birds, your layers need 20 to 40 liters, while broilers need 10 to 15 liters.
Okay, let's just go back and contextualize that dairy cow figure for a second, because the volume scales up incredibly fast. I mean, if a farm is running a dairy cow that's producing, let's say, 25 liters of milk a day.
Which is pretty standard.
Right. So she requires well over 125 liters of water just for the milk production alone.
Just for the milk, yeah.
On top of her daily maintenance needs. I mean, we are talking about a full bathtub of water per cow every single day just to keep the milking parlor operational.
It's staggering, which is an enormous logistical load to carry even in good weather, hey?
Yeah.
But the biological demand shifts violently when the environment turns hostile. So we have to apply 2 major drought corrections to these baseline numbers.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first one is heat, which fundamentally alters the animal's thermoregulation. So cattle generally drink roughly 3 liters of water per kilogram of feed consumed when the ambient temperature is a nice cool 5 degrees Celsius.
Okay, a cold winter morning.
J. But when that thermometer spikes to 32 degrees Celsius, their intake jumps to 8 liters per kilogram of feed.
From 3 to 8.
Yeah, almost triple.
So they're essentially using the water for internal evaporative cooling, right? As they pant and sweat to shed the heat, they're depleting their internal moisture reserves much, much faster.
That is the exact physiological mechanism, yes. And for sheep, the extreme is even wider. A sheep's summer water intake can reach 12 times its winter intake.
12 times.
12 times.
Yeah. So a 12-fold increase means a farm manager who's budgeting their water based on, a winter meter reading, they're going to be completely blindsided when a January heat wave hits.
Oh, absolutely. They will run their reservoirs dry in a matter of days. Which really brings us to the second drought correction, which is time.
Time, right.
Livestock, they can lose condition and survive for weeks on a caloric deficit, right, if there's not enough feed.
Sure, they get skinny, but they live.
Exactly. But they can only survive 2 to 3 days without water before cascading biological shutdown occurs.
2 to 3 days, that's nothing.
It's nothing. So this extreme biological urgency dictates the rule of thumb for farm infrastructure. The rule is your main storage must hold at least 8 days' supply of water, with an additional 2-day supply sitting ready at the drinking points or troughs.
So 10 days total, that 10-day buffer, that's basically the physical time required to notice a broken pump, source a replacement part, and get the borehole operational again before the herd starts taking casualties.
Exactly. It buys you the time to fix the infrastructure. But let's say your infrastructure is perfectly intact.
Okay.
You have the storage tanks, the boreholes are pulling from the aquifer nicely. As the drought drags on, intense evaporation strips away your surface water.
Right.
Meanwhile, your pumps are pulling from deeper, older reserves down below. So the volume might still look adequate in your tanks, but the water left behind is concentrating.
Ah, right. So the minerals and the solids that were originally dissolved in this massive body of water, they're now dissolved in a fraction of that volume. And as that salt level spikes, farm managers are usually relying on, well, laboratory reports to understand what they're dealing with. But a sheet of paper full of chemical acronyms can be a massive hurdle.
It is. It's confusing. But the primary measurement we really need to understand is TDS, or total dissolved solid.
Okay, total dissolved solid.
It's measured in milligrams per liter. And conceptually, it just tells you exactly how much physical salt and mineral matter would be left behind if you boiled a liter of that water completely away.
Just the crust left at the bottom of the pot.
Exactly.
However, the source article points out a major practical trap with lab results. They don't always provide the total dissolved solids directly, do they?
No, they don't. And this catches people out all the time. Many laboratories will output a reading called EC, which stands for electrical conductivity, and that's measured in millisiemens per meter. You cannot read an electrical conductivity number as your total dissolved solids. It's a different scale. You must multiply that EC number by roughly 6.5 to calculate your true total dissolved solids in milligrams per liter.
Okay, so let me do the math. If a manager sees an electrical conductivity of, let's say, 100 millisiemens per meter on their report,
Okay.
they multiply by 6.5, giving them 650 milligrams per liter of total dissolved solids.
Spot on, Jack. And that simple multiplication step is the only way to compare their farm's water against the established livestock safety guidelines.
And those guidelines reveal a pretty stark biological reality, don't they?
Oh, they do. The universal target, like the ideal safe zone for all stock classes, is under 1,000 milligrams per liter.
Okay.
But once you cross that threshold, different species display vastly different evolutionary tolerances.
Like who?
Well, dairy cattle, pigs, and poultry are highly sensitive. They hit their absolute comfort limit right at that 1,000 milligrams per liter mark.
Okay.
Beef cattle and horses have a more robust tolerance. They manage up to 2,000 milligrams per liter.
A bit tougher.
J. But sheep are the ultimate survivors in this category, remaining comfortable up to 3,000 milligrams per liter.
Wow. So the mechanism behind those limits is what I think requires some real attention here. Like when an animal is forced to drink water that pushes past its specific biological salt limit, what is actually happening at a cellular level?
It comes down to osmotic balance.
Osmotic balance.
Right. When an animal consumes heavily salinized water, the high concentration of minerals in the digestive tract actually draws moisture out of the animal's cells to dilute the salt.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it literally dehydrates them from the inside out. So when they're forced onto salty water, the first thing animals do is refuse it. They instinctively recognize the danger.
They just won't drink it.
Exactly. But as thirst eventually overrides their instincts, they adapt, but they drink significantly less volume than they actually require.
And because digestion, particularly the fermentation process in the rumen of cattle and sheep, that requires mass amounts of fluid, right? So drop in water intake immediately causes a proportional drop in feed intake.
The rumen essentially just stalls out. And because they stop eating, their growth halts.
Right.
In a dairy herd, milk synthesis, which as we established is incredibly water intensive, it just plummets. It's a cascading failure triggered by osmotic stress.
Wow.
But to highlight the extremes of this biological adaptation, sheep have kidney mechanisms that are so robust that they can physically survive on water testing over 10,000 milligrams per liter during a dire emergency.
10,000 milligrams per liter. That is approaching brine.
Yeah. Basically seawater.
Yet a dairy herd is already experiencing severe production losses at just 2,000 milligrams per liter. That creates a massive operational challenge. So if a farm manager finds their main borehole suddenly testing at, say, 2,500 milligrams per liter mid-drought,
Yeah.
it's highly toxic for the dairy cows, but perfectly manageable for the sheep.
Exactly. And this is where strategic water routing becomes critical. You don't just sell the dairy herd, you manage the resource.
Yep.
You route that salty borehole water specifically to your dry stock, so the non-lactating animals or the sheep. And you aggressively conserve whatever freshwater reserves you have exclusively for the animals in milk.
So you match the water quality to the biological class of the stock.
Exactly.
But there is a vital behavioral caveat in the source material regarding how you make that transition, right? Because a manager can't simply switch the valves overnight and put the dry stock onto the salty water.
No, absolutely not. Doing so invites acute mortality.
Oh, wow.
Because of that initial refusal period we discussed, a sudden switch means the herd will refuse the salty water for a day or two.
Right, because it tastes wrong.
And tastes bad. Then, driven by intense dehydration, they finally cave and they gorge themselves. That massive sudden influx of sodium overwhelms the kidneys. The body tries to dilute the salt by rapidly pulling water from everywhere, including the brain.
Jeez.
Yeah, it causes acute salt poisoning, severe neurological damage, and death.
So you can't just flip a switch.
No, you must introduce brackish water stepwise. You blend it over a week or more to allow their renal systems to adapt physically.
That is a critical operational safeguard. And for a farm where dairy is the primary business and absolutely only brackish water remains available, the structural solution relies on modern filtration, doesn't it?
It does. Installing a small-scale reverse osmosis plant is the modern fix, or RO plant.
RO, right.
A farm manager doesn't need to purify all their water to perfect drinking standards. They simply run a portion of the brackish water through the reverse osmosis membranes to remove the salts, and then blend that highly purified water back into the raw brackish water until the mixture hits that safe 1,000 milligrams per liter target.
It's like cutting it.
Exactly. It extends the usability of a poor quality borehole. But we must also note that the composition of the total dissolved solids matters immensely.
Because, all salts do not have the same biological impact.
Definitely not. Sodium chloride, which is standard table salt, is processed very differently than magnesium sulfate, which is commonly known as bitter salt.
Bitter salt, right.
If your total dissolved solids are heavily weighted toward magnesium sulfate, the biological impact is far worse. It acts as a powerful laxative. It causes severe diarrhea at concentration levels where standard sodium chloride would be easily tolerated.
So the total number matters, but the chemical makeup of that number dictates the real-world consequence.
Exactly.
Well, salt forces animals to stop drinking, and we can manage that by blending and routing, like you said. But as that water evaporates, the minerals left behind do something far more sinister than just dehydrating the herd. They become actively toxic.
Yes, they do.
So let's examine the short list of real poisons that concentrate in these drought-stricken water sources.
The most urgent threat in groundwater is nitrate. The source article establishes a very strict limit of 100 milligrams per liter as nitrate for all stock classes.
But there is a massive reporting trap hiding on the laboratory sheets that farm managers really need to catch.
It's the nitrogen conversion trap, yeah. And it causes accidental herd wipeouts all the time. Many agricultural laboratories report this chemical not as nitrate, but as nitrate as nitrogen.
Nitrate as nitrogen.
Yes. And the two numbers are not interchangeable at all. If your report says nitrate as nitrogen, you must multiply that figure by 4.4 to calculate your true nitrate level.
That mathematical step is literally life or death. A farm manager could look at a lab result of, let's say, 25 milligrams per liter of nitrate as nitrogen and assume they're safely under the 100 limit.
They'd think they have a huge buffer.
Right. But multiplying that 25 by 4.4 reveals they actually have a lethal 110 milligrams per liter of nitrate in the water.
It changes the entire risk profile of the farm instantly. And the biological mechanism of nitrate poisoning is particularly devastating in ruminants.
How so?
Well, the bacteria living in the rumen of cattle and sheep naturally take the nitrate from the water and chemically reduce it into nitrite.
With an...
Yes, Nitrite. And nitrite is 10 to 15 times more toxic than the original nitrate.
Wait, so how does that nitrate actually cause mortality once it enters the bloodstream?
The nitrite absorbs across the rumen wall into the blood, and it binds directly to the hemoglobin, oxidizing it into a form called methemoglobin.
Methemoglobin.
Yeah. And this permanently prevents the red blood cells from carrying oxygen, so the animal literally suffocates on a cellular level despite breathing heavily.
Oh, that's horrific. So they're breathing, but they're getting no oxygen.
Exactly. The mucous membranes actually turn a muddy brown color, and death follows within hours.
Wow.
And pregnant animals are exceptionally vulnerable. The lack of oxygen crosses the placenta, causing sudden abortions even if the mother manages to survive.
That is brutal.
Furthermore, nitrate in the water stacks cumulatively with nitrate ingested from heavily fertilized pastures.
Oh, so the combined load overwhelms the animal's ability to process it.
Exactly right.
Moving down the list of dissolved toxins, we already touched on magnesium sulfate earlier.
Yes, sulfate. Generally, sulfate levels should be kept under 1,000 milligrams per liter. When concentrations rise above that, it triggers severe scouring, which is intense, continuous diarrhea coupled with water refusal.
And the critical management note here is that it disproportionately impacts young stock, right?
Very much so. Calves and lambs have a much smaller body mass and will dehydrate rapidly from scouring. Mature animals can often adapt over a period of days if the concentration rises gradually, but a sudden spike will completely devastate the young animals.
Another hidden dissolved toxin mentioned in the article is fluoride. And in a farm setting, this usually originates from deep boreholes rather than surface water, correct?
Right. And the safety threshold for fluoride is very tight. It's under 2 milligrams per liter.
Just two.
Just 2. Chronic exposure above that level leads to a condition called fluorosis. The initial cosmetic sign is mottling and discoloration of the teeth,
Okay.
but as it accumulates, it fundamentally damages the bone structure and the joints.
And if the bone structure is compromised, the animal becomes lame.
It-
And a lame animal cannot walk the long distances required to reach the grazing lands or the feed trough during a drought. They essentially starve because they just cannot physically access the calories.
It creates a slow collapse in herd productivity. It's really sad. But beyond the dissolved minerals, we also have to account for biological hazards. As dams dry up and the water stagnates, bacterial loading becomes a severe issue.
Right. And the article sets a specific threshold of under 200 fecal coliforms per 100 milliliters of water.
That specific limit is primarily focused on protecting the more vulnerable digestive systems, so your calves, lambs, pigs, and poultry.
Not the adults.
Well, mature ruminants have incredibly robust rumen environments that can process and tolerate much higher bacterial loads without much issue. The true danger in a drying dam is not standard dung contamination. It's the creation of oxygen-dead, stagnant pools in the muddy margins.
Because those warm anaerobic conditions, they're the perfect breeding ground for the bacteria that produce botulism.
Botulism, joka. It's a highly lethal neurotoxin that causes total muscular paralysis. When stock wade into the muddy, shrinking edges of a dam to drink, they ingest the toxin directly.
So what's the practical intervention here? Because chemical treatment of a giant muddy dam seems nearly impossible.
Oh, it is. You can't chemically treat mud. The intervention is structural fencing. You physically fence the stock out of the shrinking dam entirely.
Okay, keep them out.
Yeah. You then use a pump to draw the cleaner, oxygenated water from the center of the dam and pipe it into dedicated concrete or plastic drinking troughs.
Which brings us to the final and I think perhaps most overlooked piece of the water system.
Yeah.
We can calculate the total dissolved solids, we can blend the boreholes, and we can fence off the stagnant dams. But all of that strategic management can become entirely compromised in the very last meter of the water's journey.
The trough itself.
Exactly.
The fundamental shift in perspective required here is viewing the trough not as static farm furniture, but as an active, highly vulnerable component of your water treatment infrastructure.
Right.
A trough filled with green slime undoes every single expensive mitigation effort you implemented upstream.
Because trough algae is not merely an aesthetic issue of, dirty water.
Not at all. Certain species of algae produce compounds that photosensitize cattle.
Photosensitize.
Jay, When ingested, these compounds enter the bloodstream and react severely to ultraviolet sunlight. It causes massive, painful skin lesions.
Oh, geez.
And more critically, toxic blue-green algae can bloom rapidly in the warm, shallow water of a trough, producing neurotoxins and hepatotoxins that are immediately lethal.
And the source material provides a very sobering, real-world example of this exact failure point.
It does.
In the Limpopo province, a toxic algal mat developed in a single, isolated cement trough, and that one trough killed 18 goats.
18 goats from one trough.
Just one. The water pumped out of the ground was safe, but the vessel it sat in became this lethal biological incubator. So if a trough is essentially a shallow, sunlit environment perfectly designed for algae, a farmer can't just wait until the water turns dark green. There must be a specific cadence of intervention to break that biological cycle.
The maintenance schedule must be aggressive, particularly during a drought when ambient temperatures are really high.
What does that look like?
First, every trough must be visually checked daily. Just use your eyes. Second, they must be physically scrubbed out at least every 3 days.
Every 3 days.
Every 3 days. That interrupts the algal life cycle before it can fully bloom. Now, if the troughs are located in a feedlot environment, they require daily scrubbing.
Really? Wow.
Third, the troughs must be fully disinfected twice a year.
And disinfecting, that isn't just a quick rinse. What is the actual mechanism of breaking down that persistent green slime?
You utilize a strong sodium hypochlorite solution, which is just standard heavy-duty bleach.
Bleach, okay.
But the key is contact time. The algae and bacteria build a complex polysaccharide matrix, basically a protective biofilm that clings to the cement or the plastic.
Like a slime layer.
Exactly. You must leave the bleach solution in the trough for at least 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
That time allows the chemical to physically oxidize and destroy the cell walls of the biofilm. Once the contact time is achieved, it must be rinsed incredibly well before allowing stock back to it. You don't want them drinking bleach.
Right. Definitely not. But beyond chemical cleaning, we can also modify the physical environment of the trough to suppress growth.
Right. Shading is the most effective passive defense. You must shade or cover both your storage tanks and your troughs wherever physically possible.
Because algae require sunlight to photosynthesize and bloom.
Exactly. Take away the sun, you drastically reduce the growth rate. Furthermore, if you are dosing your water with chlorine to keep it safe, ultraviolet light from the sun rapidly degrades that chlorine.
Oh, leaving the water completely unprotected.
Exactly. So a simple roof structure solves both issues simultaneously. Finally, you need to separate your feed infrastructure from your water infrastructure.
So you want to ensure the animals don't walk over with mouths full of feed, drop half of it into the water, and create this nutrient-rich soup that just accelerates bacterial and algal growth.
Spot on. Keep the zones distinct so they swallow their feed before they drink. It sounds so simple, but it drastically reduces the biological loading in the trough.
We have covered a tremendous amount of ground here today. From borehole chemistry all the way down to trough hygiene. Let's pull this all together into a cohesive strategy. What is the fundamental rule of thumb summary that a South African farm manager needs to operate by as the dry season really sets in?
It requires diligent calculation and proactive routing.
Okay.
First, budget your volumes accurately. Remember, 50 liters a day for a standard beef cow and 5 liters per liter of milk produced for the dairy herd. When a heat wave hits, you must double those summer water intake figures.
Right. Plan for the heat.
Second, intelligently match your water quality to the biological class of the stock. Your best, freshest water is reserved for the animals in milk and the young stock. Your saltier, brackish water is routed to the dry stock and the sheep and introduced very gradually to prevent osmotic shock.
Don't just flip the switch.
Exactly. And finally, maintain the hygiene of the last meter. Clean the troughs every 3 days, not every 3 months.
Every 3 days. And I think the most crucial warning we can extract from this deep dive is this. Whatever your laboratory report stated at the beginning of the dry season, it is no longer accurate.
Yes. You must retest the water mid-drought. Evaporation dictates that the dissolved solids and toxins the lab found, say, 3 months ago, they're now far more concentrated.
Right. The environmental conditions are dynamic, so your testing protocol basically must reflect that reality. Last season's safe borehole can very easily become this season's toxic liability.
It's a massive operational challenge, but understanding the mechanisms gives you the power to manage it.
Absolutely.
You know, before we conclude, the data we've reviewed today regarding extreme salt tolerance, it highlights a fascinating biological reality.
What's that?
Well, we focused on how fragile dairy cows become when total dissolved solids hit just 2,000 milligrams per liter. Yet, a humble sheep can physically regulate its osmotic balance and survive at 10,000 milligrams per liter.
That seawater level we talked about.
Exactly. As climate patterns shift and severe water scarcity becomes a more frequent global reality, we have to look at these animals not just as stock to be managed, but as biological libraries.
Biological libraries. That's a great phrase.
Scientists are currently mapping these specific genomic traits. If the genetic sequences dictating the extreme renal efficiency of the arid-adapted sheep could eventually be understood and somehow bred into our more sensitive dairy cattle,
Oh, wow.
it could fundamentally drought-proof the global dairy industry. The solution to our most pressing agricultural vulnerabilities might already be walking around in our grazing camps.
That is a profound angle on agricultural resilience, and certainly something to consider while you were out there scrubbing the troughs this week.
Indeed.
Well, that brings us to the end of our analysis. We strongly encourage every listener to visit the Department of Water and Sanitation's knowledge base. Pull up the article titled Livestock Drinking Water: How Much, How Salty, and What Poisons It? Review the numbers against your own herd, and please get your farm's water tested before the dry season hits hard.
Get it tested, yeah.
Manage the chemistry, protect the herd, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.